Imagine an undefeated champion, arrogant and unbeatable, who doesn't just fight to win but to humiliate his opponents. In the ring, he's the star, until he decides to provoke the wrong person. He has no idea that on that night, Jason Statham is there watching every move. And when the fighter tries to publicly challenge the actor, thinking he's going to humiliate him in front of everyone, he makes the biggest mistake of his life. Want to know how this story ends? Then stick around until the end because you won't believe what happens next. Before we continue, make sure to hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any epic stories like this one. Now let's get into the action. The boxing gym was packed that night, pulsating with an almost palpable energy. The deafening sound of the crowd echoed off the concrete walls, creating a continuous roar that made the ground tremble. The intense spotlight beams focused on the center of the ring, where the main fight was about to begin. The audience was in a frenzy, waving flags and banners bearing the name of Jimmy the Bull Reynolds, the current undefeated champion, feared for his brutality and known for his arrogance. The atmosphere was electric, and every face in the crowd seemed eager to witness yet another devastating victory from their idol. The arena was decorated with posters of past fights, all showcasing Jimmy's confident and intimidating face, always with a cynical and triumphant smile after crushing his opponents. The walls displayed newspaper clippings with headlines glorifying his relentless victories, while fans held up signs with provocative and challenging phrases, exalting the supposed invincibility of the champion. The ring gleamed under the spotlights, its surface scarred from previous battles, marked with sweat stains and traces of blood that told stories of struggle and endurance. The atmosphere was intense, almost suffocating, and the noise intensified with each passing minute. In the front row, discreetly seated, was Jason Statham. Arms crossed and gaze steady, he maintained a calm and reserved posture, but his eyes were sharp, taking in every detail. He wasn't one to be impressed by ego-filled spectacles or loud provocations. His presence went unnoticed by most, but those who recognized him knew that this man was not there by coincidence. His serene expression was almost unsettling amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, backstage, Jimmy was preparing for the fight. The locker room was full of his team, constantly praising him, boasting about his strength and reaffirming his superiority. He stood in front of the mirror, carefully adjusting his hand wraps while laughing at his teammates' jokes. His confidence was almost tangible, radiating from every gesture and look. The coach tried to give technical advice, but Jimmy wasn't interested. To him, the fight was already won before it even started. He threw a few punches in the air, testing his speed and precision, and smiled at his own reflection, certain that nothing could go wrong that night. Adrenaline pumped through his veins and he felt untouchable, like a force of nature ready to crush yet another opponent. On the other side of the gym, in a dimly lit corridor, the veteran opponent was warming up his arms, making slow and precise movements to ease muscle tension. His face bore the marks of past fights, each scar telling a story of sweat and sacrifice. He knew that age was no longer on his side, but his determination remained unwavering. There was an internal silence that contrasted with the noise of the arena. He breathed deeply, feeling the weight of expectation, aware that few believed in his victory. Yet his eyes held a strange serenity, an acceptance of whatever fate had in store for him that night. The announcement of the fight thundered through the gym like a clap of thunder. The crowd erupted with excitement as the lights danced over the ring. Jimmy entered first, putting on his usual show. He strode in with exaggerated, cocky steps, greeting fans with quick and provocative gestures. He swung his arms around as if warming up his fists and made sure to mock his opponent before even seeing him. A few reporters approached, capturing images of his triumphant entrance. He raised his arms to the crowd, flaunting the championship belt with a confident smile and making a victory gesture before the fight had even begun. The cheers grew louder, and he seemed to absorb all that energy as if it were fuel for his ego. The veteran entered the ring afterward, quietly, without drawing attention. Some fans didn't even bother to applaud, certain that he would just be another name on Jimmy's list of defeated opponents. The contrast between the two fighters was striking. On one side, Jimmy's youthful vigor and arrogance. On the other, the calm resignation of a man who knew the pain and fatigue of every punch. Jimmy looked at the veteran with disdain, shaking his head and murmuring taunts that only his opponent could hear. He mocked the man's age, saying he should be at home with a cup of tea instead of embarrassing himself there. The old fighter kept his gaze fixed, not responding to the provocations, just waiting for the fight to begin. The referee went through the usual procedures, giving the final instructions. Jimmy didn't pay attention, too busy showing off his physique and provoking the crowd with gestures of superiority. The veteran remained motionless, waiting for the bell to ring. When the bell finally echoed, Jimmy charged forward with speed and brutality. His punches were fast and precise, landing repeatedly on the veteran and forcing him to retreat. With every hit, Jimmy grinned and mocked, as if he was just toying with the opponent. The crowd roared with every successful blow, thrilled by the theatrical violence he delivered. The veteran could barely respond to the attacks, mostly shielding his face and protecting his body while Jimmy unleashed punches with calculated fury. His intention was not just to win, but to utterly humiliate. In a moment of the veteran's lapse, a direct hit to the jaw sent him crashing to the canvas. Jimmy didn't miss the opportunity to pose triumphantly, standing over the fallen opponent with his arms raised to the crowd as if already celebrating the victory. The audience went wild, and Jimmy's smug smile grew wider, feeling like the king of the ring. Jason remained seated in the front row, his gaze impassive. His posture hadn't changed, but something in his expression suggested a quiet indignation. He wasn't there to witness a spectacle of humiliation, and that arrogant behavior was beginning to test his limits. Jimmy kept taunting, mocking the fallen old fighter while the crowd chanted for more violence. Jason, however, didn't take his eyes off the scene, waiting for the right moment to act, fully aware that the champion was about to face a truth he had never encountered before. Between rounds, while Jimmy drank water with his head thrown back, his chest swelled with pride and confidence. The coach whispered something in his ear, but he paid no attention, more focused on flashing his smug smile at the cameras, capturing every detail of the spectacle. The intense lights illuminated his sweaty face, and he made sure to show that he was having fun. The crowd's shouts still echoed through the stands, mixed with some comments urging him to finish the fight quickly. A group of more excited fans encouraged Jimmy to land the final blow on the veteran, and he just waved dismissively, as if the challenge was too small for his talent. The referee watched as the veteran slowly got back on his feet, his arms heavy like lead, breathing laboriously as the final seconds of the break approached. The old man wiped his face with a towel, trying to regain composure, but his tired expression left no doubt that he was on the verge of collapse. That's when something caught Jimmy's attention. Amidst the applause and cheers, a voice rose louder, provoking the champion to stop playing around and end the fight. The taunt made Jimmy laugh, but as he looked to find the source, his eyes locked onto a figure he didn't expect to see. Jason Statham sitting in the front row with his arms crossed, eyes fixed on the ring. For a moment, Jimmy seemed surprised, but the surprise quickly gave way to a spark of amusement. That cold, unwavering stare from Jason bothered him, as if his entire performance meant nothing. The lack of reaction was almost an insult to someone used to being idolized. Jimmy exchanged a quick glance with his trainers but soon returned to glaring at Jason, an arrogant idea forming in his mind. He then raised his arms as if warming up and started pointing in Jason's direction. He made exaggerated gestures, simulating a punch, and threw out a taunt that made the crowd laugh. The audience, previously focused on the fight, shifted their attention to this unexpected verbal clash. Jimmy shouted provocative words, suggesting that Hollywood had no place in a real ring and that guys like Jason only knew how to pretend to be tough on camera. The laughter grew louder, and Jimmy continued to gesture as if he were staging a ridiculous fight. The audience played along, cheering on the champion, who now felt at the center of a new, unexpected spectacle. Some even began chanting Jason's name, almost daring him to react. Jason, however, remained motionless. His gaze didn't change, fixed on the ring as if all that noise wasn't worthy of his attention. His expression remained firm and unshakable, and that started to irritate Jimmy. The fighter couldn't stand being ignored, His vanity demanded a response, a reaction, something that validated his presence there. Frustrated by Jason's silence, Jimmy decided it was time to elevate the humiliation. After knocking out the veteran once more with a devastating cross that sent the man crashing down like a sack of sand, he raised his arms to the crowd, demanding applause. The crowd chanted his name, but he still wasn't satisfied. With an imperious gesture, he signaled for the announcer and grabbed the microphone. He took a deep breath, still panting from the fight, and started to give a speech about how no one there was a match for him. He claimed he was bored with weak opponents and needed a real challenge. Without hesitation, he pointed directly at Jason and issued the ultimate challenge. The gym fell silent for a second before erupting in a wave of cheers and whistles. Everyone awaited the actor's reaction, curious to see what would happen next. Jimmy kept talking, trying to provoke even more, calling Jason a coward and suggesting that he was only strong in movies, where fights were choreographed and risk-free. Jason remained silent, just looking at Jimmy with a calm that was almost unsettling. His eyes stayed fixed, unblinking, as if studying the fighter's every move. The tension grew with every second he stayed seated, and the crowd began to urge him to step into the ring, chanting his name repeatedly. Feeling victorious for provoking such a reaction from the crowd, Jimmy raised his arms again, encouraging more applause as if he had already won a battle that hadn't even started. His smile was wide and confident, and he kept provoking Jason with gestures that mimicked a pathetic fight. That was when Jason finally moved. Unhurriedly, he unfolded his arms and rose from his seat with a posture that showed no hint of being impressed or intimidated. Just standing up made the crowd buzz with excitement. Jason calmly adjusted his jacket and walked toward the ring stairs, climbing up without any rush as if there was no urgency at all. Jimmy tried to keep smiling, but something in his expression shifted when he saw Jason cross the ropes with such silent confidence. Statham's presence was overwhelming, and the champion's smile began to fade. He swallowed hard, realizing that he might have gone too far. With a look full of disdain, Jimmy said that Jason was about to discover that action movies were nothing compared to the reality of a boxing ring. He added that Jason was just an actor pretending to be tough, and that in a few seconds he would be lying on the floor, humiliated in front of everyone. He smiled confidently, expecting those words to shake Jason, but all he got in response was a profound silence and an unwavering stare. Jason didn't react immediately, keeping calm as if the provocations didn't matter at all. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, Jason slowly began to take off his jacket, folding it carefully and handing it to one of the assistants beside the ring. His gaze never left Jimmy's, who now struggled to hide his discomfort. Jason's expression conveyed absolute certainty, as if he already knew exactly how the fight would end. It was at that moment that Jimmy realized he might have made a mistake. Something about Jason's presence made his confidence waver for a moment. The actor's silence was more intimidating than any response Jimmy could have imagined. The referee, still stunned by the situation, hesitated before authorizing the fight. But the crowd was already on the verge of madness, shouting for Jason and waiting to see what would happen. Jimmy shook his arms again, trying to regain the lost confidence. But something in his stance revealed a growing insecurity. Jason remained steady, his feet well placed, his body relaxed but carrying an energy ready to explode at any moment. Jimmy moved first, throwing a quick punch that Jason dodged with a slight head tilt. The fighter tried another punch, but Jason blocked it with his forearm as if dealing with a light training session. With each wasted blow, Jimmy's expression transformed from confidence to frustration. He couldn't understand how someone could evade his hits so effortlessly, and it began to eat away at his arrogant posture. Jason just waited for the right moment, aware that the champion's arrogance would make him commit a fatal mistake. Without wasting time, Jimmy threw the first punch, a quick and powerful cross aimed straight at Jason's face. But with minimal and precise movement, Jason dodged to the side, as if he had predicted the trajectory of the punch even before it was thrown. Jimmy lost his balance slightly but quickly adjusted his posture, trying to hide his frustration. Without giving room for doubt, he threw another punch, a fast jab slicing through the air toward Jason. Yet again, the blow met nothing but empty space, and Jason simply leaned back, watching the movement pass just inches from his face. Jimmy gritted his teeth, realizing that his attacks were having no effect. The crowd began to murmur, some perplexed at how effortlessly Jason avoided the punches. Jimmy stepped back for a moment, taking a deep breath and glancing quickly at his trainers, who gestured desperately, urging him to attack more aggressively. The fighter snorted, indignant at Jason's passivity, who still hadn't even raised his hands to defend himself. He felt his own stance start to waver, as if the confidence he had shown moments earlier was crumbling in the face of such an imposing and silent presence. With a surge of anger and wounded pride, Jimmy advanced with even more intensity, unleashing a flurry of quick and brutal punches. His movement was fierce and precise, but Jason continued to dodge with a disturbing calmness. Each dodge seemed easier than the last, and Jason didn't even have to step back. His evasions were calculated to the millimeter, avoiding each punch with a slight head movement or a subtle torso twist. Jimmy's frustration grew with every failed attempt. His muscles were already showing signs of fatigue, and his rhythm became less controlled. He knew he was wasting too much energy trying to hit a target that simply would not stay still. The audience, once vibrant and confident, gradually fell silent, realizing that the champion was being dominated without Jason even counterattacking. Finally, after a hook that barely grazed Jason's shoulder, Jimmy completely lost his balance. Jason saw the opening. His gaze became even more focused. His muscles relaxed for a brief moment before exploding into action. With a quick and direct movement, he delivered a firm punch to Jimmy's abdomen, compressing the air from his lungs with such a devastating impact that the sound echoed throughout the gym. Jimmy doubled over, his face contorted in intense pain. The blow seemed to have shut down his ability to breathe, and he struggled to stay on his feet while gasping, desperately trying to catch his breath. But Jason gave him no time to recover. With impeccable precision, he slightly rotated his body and delivered a precise uppercut to Jimmy's chin. The impact was brutal. Jimmy's head snapped to the side, his eyes lost focus, and his body collapsed to the ground like a felled tree. The sound of his fall was muffled by the sudden silence of the crowd, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The undefeated champion lay flat on his back, completely unconscious, with his arms stretched out and his gloves pointing upward, as if he were in a distant dream. The referee, still in shock, approached to check on Jimmy's condition, while the medical team rushed into the ring, fearing the worst. The champion's trainers were paralyzed, unable to react, stunned at how someone so powerful had fallen with such ease. Jason didn't wait for the crowd to react. Breathing calmly, he just looked down, observing Jimmy's blank expression. There was no pride in his stance, no celebration on his face. It was as if he had known all along that this outcome was inevitable. The audience remained silent, as if trapped in a state of disbelief. Without looking back, Jason walked to the ropes, picked up his jacket that he had left neatly folded at the side, and put it on calmly, adjusting the collar as if nothing unusual had happened. The tension in the air seemed frozen, and the crowd, still paralyzed, struggled to process what they had just witnessed. As he finally crossed the ropes and stepped down from the ring, some spectators began to murmur among themselves, trying to comprehend how the man they so highly praised had been brought down with such simplicity. Gradually, a few started to applaud, not for the spectacle of violence, but for the silent lesson they had just witnessed. Jason continued on his way out of the gym, walking with his head held high and calm steps. The message was clear. True strength is not displayed through arrogance or supported by loud proclamations of superiority. It resides in calmness, precision, and the silent confidence of someone who knows exactly what they are capable of doing. As he stepped out into the cold city street, Jason vanished into the darkness, leaving behind an arena where everyone, in some way, had learned a valuable lesson. And that night, it became clear to everyone that true greatness doesn't belong to those who shout the loudest or flaunt their power theatrically, but rather to those who stand firm and composed, fully aware of their strength. This story teaches us that true strength doesn't lie in arrogance or the desire to humiliate others, but in the ability to act with firmness and respect, even when challenged. Jason Statham showed that those who truly have power don't need to brag or provoke. Sometimes the strongest attitude is calmness and silent confidence. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever seen someone put in their place like that before? Have you ever been in a similar situation? Share your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button to support the channel and guarantee more epic content like this. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss any of our next exciting stories. See you next time.